In March 1905, British traveler Gertrude Bell rode north from Homs across the Syrian uplands. Her journey would cover nearly 150 kilometers, eventually bringing her to the ancient city of Aleppo. But before she reached its windswept heights, she passed through one of the most archaeologically rich regions of the Levant, the Jebel Zawiya. This limestone massif in northern Syria is dotted with dead cities, abandoned towns from the late Roman and Byzantine period, filled with Christian churches and tombs that had outlasted the memory of their builders. These towns once thrived in the 4th to 6th centuries, built by prosperous Syriac-speaking Christians, many of whom converted to Christianity during the Byzantine era. At one such site, known to Bell as Tarutin, and now identified as Keratin, she encountered a company of unexpected allies.
I had not been in camp an hour before there was a great commotion among my men, and Mikhail came to my tent shouting, "The Americans! The Americans!" It was not a raid, but the Princeton Archaeological Expedition, and a fortunate encounter my camp thought it. For each one of us found acquaintances among the masters or among the muleteers, and had time to talk, as people will talk who meet by chance upon an empty road. The day I spent at Tarutin provided me with an admirable object lesson in archaeology. As the members of the expedition planned the ruins and deciphered the inscriptions, the whole 5th century town rose from its ashes and stood before us. Churches, houses, forts, rock-hewn tombs with the names and dates of death of the occupants carved over the door.
Led by Howard Crosby Butler, the Princeton expedition was one of the first major American archaeological projects in the Levant. They focused on systematic photography and architectural documentation of early Christian ruins. Their fieldwork in Syria helped define the Byzantine architectural legacy in the region, preserving records of towns that would later be threatened by war and neglect. The meeting between Bell and the Americans at Keratin marked a brief but harmonious exchange between two parallel missions, each committed, in their own way, to reviving the voices of the past. Bell would soon ride on to Aleppo, though the journey would stretch over several days. Aleppo, one of the oldest continually inhabited cities in the world, had long stood at the intersection of trade, empire, and religion. By the time Bell arrived, it had become a muted echo of its former glory.
We reached Aleppo at midday, approaching it by an open drain. Whether it were because of the evil smell or because of the heavy sky and dust-laden wind, I do not know. But the first impression of Aleppo was disappointing. The name, in its charming Europeanized form, should belong to a more attractive city, and attractive Aleppo certainly is not, for it is set in a barren, treeless, featureless world, the beginning of the great Mesopotamian flats.
The first landmark to rise into view was Aleppo's famed citadel. Perched dramatically on a natural mound, it dominated the horizon long before any sign of the city itself came into sight.
The site of the town is like a cup and saucer. The houses lie in the saucer, and the castle stands on the upturned cup, its minaret visible several hours away, while no vestige of the city appears until the last mile of the road.
Aleppo's early history stretches back over 4,000 years. The city was ruled successively by the Arameans, Hittites, Assyrians, and Neo-Babylonians, before becoming a strategic outpost of the Seleucid and Roman empires. In the early Islamic period, it became the capital of the Hamdanid dynasty, whose ruler Saif al-Dawla made it a center of Arabic culture and poetry in the 10th century. It later fell under the Zengids, then the Ayyubids, who began transforming the citadel into a formidable military complex. The Mamluks expanded it further in the 13th and 14th centuries, adding defensive towers, a majestic stone bridge, and intricate architectural flourishes. By Bell's time, the citadel remained the crown of the city, though the world around it had lost much of its grandeur. The Ottoman Empire, once an imperial superpower, had become what European diplomats cynically called the sick man of Europe. Its vast territories, weakened by administrative inertia and regional unrest, attracted the attention of rival empires eager to carve out spheres of influence. France, Britain, and Germany competed for military and political advantage, as well as infrastructure projects, railways, ports, and telegraph lines that promised to reshape the economic destiny of the region. Aleppo, once a vital node on the Silk Road and a hub of caravan commerce, had long thrived as a gateway between East and West. But under Ottoman rule, and in the shadow of rising European interests, its fortunes had stalled.
Aleppo should be still, as it was in times past, the great distributing center for the merchandise of the interior, but traffic is throttled by the fatal frequency with which the government commandeers the baggage camels. Aleppo merchants do not wish to send their goods a 3 days' journey to Beirut. They want a handy seaport of their own, which will enable them to pocket all the profits of the trade, and that port should be Alexandretta. Neither does the Baghdad Railway, if it be continued, offer any prospect of advantage. By a branch line already existing, built by English and French capitalists, but has recently passed under German control, the railway will touch the sea at Mersinah. But Mersinah is as far from Aleppo as is Beirut.
Railways had revolutionized commerce across the globe, linking once remote cities to ports and capital markets. In the Ottoman Empire, however, railroads became tools of foreign diplomacy and economic competition. European powers vied for exclusive concessions to build and operate rail lines. With each new track, a line of influence drawn across the Sultan's map.
That a line should be laid direct from Aleppo to Alexandretta is extremely improbable, since the Sultan fears above all things to connect the inland caravan routes with the coast, lest the troops of the foreigner, and particularly of England, should find it perilously easy to land from their warships and march up country.
Ottoman fear of connecting the interior with the Mediterranean coast stemmed from a desire to slow the advance of foreign powers. Yet this policy of calculated isolation, intended to preserve sovereignty, had the opposite effect. It stifled trade, alienated local elites, and left the empire increasingly vulnerable to the very powers it feared. Though her stay in Aleppo was short and mostly hampered by rain, Bell made it a point to meet the city's leading officials. One of the most prominent among them was the governor of Aleppo.
He received me in an offhand manner, and his first remark was, "I am the young pasha who made peace between the churches." I knew enough of his history to realize that he had been mutaserrif of Jerusalem at a time when the rivalries between the Christian sects had ended in more murders than are customary, and that some kind of uneasy compromise had been reached, whether through his ingenuity or the necessities of the case, I had not heard.
Ottoman Jerusalem was often subject to volatile and violent competition between Orthodox, Catholic, Armenian, Coptic, and Ethiopian Christians over control of the holy places in Jerusalem. These rivalries, dating back centuries, had intensified under Ottoman rule, especially in the 19th century, when each sect was backed by a different European power. Russia supported the Orthodox, France championed the Catholics, and Austria often advocated on behalf of the Armenians. Disputes often erupted over seemingly minor issues: who could clean a certain stairway, light a lamp, or hold mass in a side chapel. But these details were sacred symbols of legitimacy and priority. Even the position of a ladder became a battleground. In the mid-19th century, a wooden ladder was left on a ledge beneath a window of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. No one could agree who had the right to move it, so it remained, untouched for over 150 years, a mute symbol of frozen conflict. Despite an imperial decree issued in 1852, known as the status quo, which attempted to lock in existing rights and privileges among the sects, the arrangement remained fragile. Fistfights and even stabbings between monks were not uncommon. Bell's conversation with Aleppo's governor soon shifted from the quarrels of clerics in Jerusalem to the currents of power shaping the Arabian Peninsula.
"I am very Anglophile," said he. "I express the gratitude of my country in suitable terms." "But what are you doing in Yemen?" he added quickly. "Excellency," said I, "we English are a maritime people, and there are but two places that concern us in all Arabia." "I know," he interpolated. "Mecca and Medina." "No," said I. "Aden and Kuwait." "And you hold them both," he returned angrily. Yes, I am bound to confess that the tones of his voice were not those of an Anglo-maniac.
From an Ottoman perspective, Britain's strategic interest in Arabia would naturally center on the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, guardianship of which had long been a key source of Ottoman religious legitimacy. But Bell's reply reflects a different framework, not religious, but commercial and geopolitical. Aden, on the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, controlled access to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, critical arteries of the British Empire's sea route to India. Kuwait, at the head of the Persian Gulf, offered a naval foothold near the Mesopotamian oil fields and the approaches to Iran. Together, they formed a maritime pincer, securing the empire's lines of trade and communication. While Ottoman officials still measured imperial prestige in terms of symbolic authority over sacred sites, their European rivals were already operating in a world of shipping lanes, coaling stations, and commercial choke points. The assumptions that had once underpinned Ottoman governance were becoming obsolete, outpaced by an age of steamships, telegraphs, and gunboat diplomacy. Among the people she met within the city, Bell found genuine warmth and reflection in her meeting with the Greek Catholic Archbishop of Aleppo, a man who straddled two worlds.
We sat in a room filled with books, the windows opening onto the silent courtyard of his palace, and talked of the paths into which thought had wandered in Europe. But I found to my pleasure that for all his learning and his long sojourn in the West, the Archbishop had remained an Oriental at heart. "I rejoiced," said he, "when I was ordered to return from Paris to my own land. There is much knowledge, but little faith in France, while in Syria, though there is much ignorance, religion rests upon a sure foundation of belief."
The Archbishop's remark underscored the philosophical gap between East and West in the early 20th century, between the technological optimism of European secularism and the deeply rooted religiosity of the Levant. Bell, herself a product of Enlightenment rationalism, noted the contrast, showing respect for the region's spiritual vitality. Ottoman politics was precarious and deeply factional. Power at court shifted constantly, depending on who held the Sultan's ear. Even the highest-ranking officials could find themselves suddenly exiled or promoted into irrelevance. Aleppo, Bell observed, with its strategic obscurity, became a favored dumping ground for such outcasts.
The air of Aleppo is judged by the Sultan to be particularly suitable for pashas, who have fallen under his displeasure at Constantinople. The town is so full of exiles that even the most casual visitor can scarcely help making acquaintance with a few of them. One was lodged in my hotel, a mild-mannered dyspeptic, whom no one would have suspected of revolutionary sympathies. Probably he was indeed without them, and owed his banishment merely to some chance word, reported and magnified by an enemy or a spy. I was to see many of these exiles scattered up and down Asia Minor, and none that I encountered could tell me for what cause they had suffered banishment.
One of the more remarkable figures Bell encountered in Aleppo was Muhammad Ali Pasha, an Ottoman official who had married an Englishwoman, a union that signaled both the broadening cultural exchanges of the era and the scandal such unions could provoke within traditional hierarchies.
There is another form of exile to be met with in Turkey, the honourable banishment of a distant appointment, To this class, I fancy, belongs Nazim Pasha himself, and so does my friend Muhammad Ali Pasha of Aleppo. The latter is an agreeable man of about 30 married to an English wife. He accompanied me to the valley's house, obtained permission that I should see the citadel, and in many ways contrived to make himself useful. His wife was a pleasant little lady from Brixton. He had met her in Constantinople and there married her, which may, for aught I know, have been partly the reason of his fall from favour, the English nation not being a gens grata at Yildiz Kiosk.
At last, Bell made her way to the city's main landmark, the ancient citadel, and was met with both military formality and folklore.
We reached the citadel in the 1 hour of sunlight that shone on Aleppo during my stay, and were taken round by polite officers, splendid in uniforms and clanking swords and spurs, who were particularly anxious that I should not miss the small mosque in the middle of the fortress, erected on the very spot where Abraham milked his cow. The very name of Aleppo, said they, is due to this historic occurrence, and there can be no doubt that its Arabic form, Haleb, is composed of the same root letters as those that form the verb to milk.
According to Islamic tradition, the prophet Abraham is believed to have journeyed across Mesopotamia and the Levant. While his better-known stops include Ur, Haran, and Hebron, legends like this one, rooting him in Aleppo, are widespread across the region. In Islamic lore, he also appears in Mecca, where he and his son Ishmael are said to have rebuilt the Kaaba. Such stories illustrate how Abraham became a shared spiritual ancestor across Jewish, Christian, and Muslim communities, each attaching his legacy to local landmarks and hills.